the water's fine, homie, jump into the deep end. Sow it, you will reap it. We talking how to start it, how to grow it, how to keep it. Take a deep breath. You are now rocking with Founder Secrets.
Laurel Mintz. You might be the first person that we've had on the pod that has a flavor as a last name that you don't like. Welcome to Founder Secrets.
Thank you for having me.
This should be a lot of fun. I think we'll be able to talk about marketing, which is near and dear to my heart. I owned a marketing agency for 12 years, investing, startups, entrepreneurship, cool art in the background. So it should be a fun time. But before we get started, we'll start like we always do with an icebreaker. What's one movie, show, or book that shaped how you think about leadership? Is there anything that specifically pops into mind?
Police Academy. No, I'm just kidding. Wouldn't that be a funny one? You're like, I don't understand. Really anything by Simon Sinek. It's not like a book or a movie, but I think his content specifically around Start With Why is so meaningful to me in how I lead my team, making sure that I'm very heart-centered as a leader and people-focused.
I like that. That's a much nicer one than I'm getting ready to say. So mine is, I've never actually seen the movie. I've just seen the scene repeatedly, but Glenn Ross, right? Or he's in there's the famous scene where he's like, coffee is for closers. And I've just seen that scene on YouTube. And I guess it hypes me up to think about sales. You know, most of my work today is selling. And when I feel like I'm in a little bit of a lull, I'll watch that scene, get all hyped up and ready to, go win that Cadillac.
Yeah, maybe I should say Boiler Room or like Wolf of Wall Street or something. Depends on how salty you're feeling any day, right?
I like it. So I wanted to start with something kind of interesting. I noticed on one of your interviews that you took over a family business, which I have another friend of mine in Vancouver who also, she took over family business. Her father tragically passed away. It all happened very quickly, and she ended up stepping in. So that kind of piqued my interest because it feels like those can go several directions, right? And it seemed like yours had a happy ending. But would you mind sharing a little bit about what happened? What did you learn from that experience?
Sure. Yeah, I was a practicing attorney at the time. I'm still an attorney, but reformed, as I like to say. And then my dad got sick. He came down with stage 4 bladder cancer, which he survived. So we're really grateful for that. So I ended up stepping in to take over his interest in a company called Bassett Furniture. Are you familiar with the brand?
I am familiar with it, yeah. Somewhat,
Big,
not super familiar, but yes.
Yeah, big national chain. Whenever anyone's like, oh, yes, I have your furniture in my house, I'm like, thanks for paying my student loans. I really appreciate it. So stepped in at 26 as interim CEO there, ran that for 3 years and eventually sold 9. And honestly, Taylor, what it taught me was that not everyone should be an operator. My dad was always a really good salesman, and that's where I get my schmooze skills from. But I always like to be super transparent in my interviews. And when I stepped into that business, he was fully over leveraged and the business was not healthy. And so as a first time C-suite executive, that was, I think the term is shit show. Yeah, but we got it done.
But how do you, in a scenario like that, how were you able to turn things around in a way that I assume that, there's staff, there are people who have been there for a long time. Here's a new person coming in. It's hard to change a ship like that. It's hard to change the culture, especially if it is a shit show. How are you able to kind of get them to buy into the vision and kind of turn things around and make it a positive experience?
Well, everyone still wanted a paycheck. So let's start there. Like, again, being super transparent. And then the other piece is that, I wasn't stepping in as a hotshot kid trying to be, have all this bravado taking over the family business. They knew that I was stepping in because my family needed to survive. My dad literally needed to survive, and my family needed to survive financially and emotionally. So I think the energy around that was really supportive because it was never something that was on my bingo card for sure. But I will say it was really challenging. I mean, I was the youngest person in the entire company by like at least a decade, certainly the youngest woman and one of only 2 or 3 women in the company of a staff of 60. So it was not an easy ship to right, but I think because of all that kind of confluence of reasons why they stood behind me, and at the end of the day, we definitely lost some folks, people walked away, but we were able to, as I said before, right the ship and eventually sell back to corporate in 2009.
Nice, nice. And you've had this kind of this interesting journey. You touched on it: law, marketing, kind of agency work, and investing. Can you touch on those? Are very different. Can you touch on like what attracted you to each, and what made you go into down each of those paths?
Well, I didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. And so I was really good at school. So I just went like all the way through. So, and when I was in law school, which I hated, by the way, the dean of the school went to her and I said, I'm leaving. Like, I'm not going to waste my time and money. This is not for me. I'd never found an area of law that was like super attractive. And so she smartly recognized that the reason was that I wasn't like, combat was not my vibe. I really wanted to be more in a team collaborative, creative, problem solving environment. And so I ended up doing the MBA in digital marketing, which is where I got excitement around marketing, but still didn't know what I wanted to do. So took the bar, passed California my first time, practiced for a hot second. That's when I ended up having to step down from the firm to take over the family business. And then when I was kind of figuring out what was next for me, I was consulting on the side while going after those big law firm jobs, getting those great six-figure offers, which should have made me very happy, made my mother really happy at the time. She was like, "Oh, she still introduces me, my daughter, the lawyer." I'm like, Mom, I had like 4 careers since then, but that's a whole nother story. And what I realized was about a year into consulting that was a business that I could build. That was back in the day when it was new media. I'm totally dating myself now. You know.
Mhm.
And so about a year in, like I said, I was like, I think that this is something I can build. And that's when I officially started like hiring and training team and built, my was an LLC at the time, now we're a corporation. And kind of the rest is history on the marketing side. So when I started making real money at the agency was when I had these like light bulb moments of, wow, my family did not teach me how to make money, or what to do with money, right? They taught me the value of a dollar. And that's why I think I have such a strong work ethic. But I started having like what they call bag lady syndrome. Like the bottom's going to drop out. I don't know what to do with this. Like I'm going to lose it all tomorrow. Like that real true fear factor. And so I was lucky enough to come across a woman who now is an investor in fabric and sits on our board. And she at the time, this was like 20 years ago, 15 years ago, she ran a women's investment group, which was much rarer back then. And I joined, and I was the youngest person again in that room by probably 10, 15 years. I would sit and listen to these brilliant women talk about deals, all the investment jargon, and I would take notes and nod and pretend like I knew what the fuck they were talking about. And I totally didn't. And then I would go home and I would Google and I would teach myself and I would be like, oh, I know what a GP, that's just someone that runs a fund. I get that. And an LP is what an investor would be in a fund. And, this is what a return might look like for an early stage versus late stage. And about a year into that relationship, they brought a late stage tech fund to the table. I came home to my husband and I said, I know I'm new at this, but I think we need to do this deal. And we pooled everything liquid we had together at that time. And I'm very proud to say that we are exiting that. Was 12 years later because it's been a kind of a shit show in Ventureland at an 8.5x on paper for now. So I
Wow.
don't want to, pat my back too much until we're actually exited. But, and then the jump from there to launching the fund was because of my legal and business background, a lot of private equity and venture firms were coming to us to market them and their portfolio companies. And about 3 years ago, one of the GP clients said, you need to go launch a fund. You have better earlier deal flow, this marketing special sauce, and this commitment to diversity. And I was like, no, thank you. I'm
Hmm.
good. Happy to be an LP. Don't need to be a GP. And then I frankly saw how we could build a better mousetrap. Most GPs in funds are not operators and they just don't understand how to add real value. And I saw very clearly how we could do that. And so that's what we've done.
So I think there were a couple of things I want to call out. One, you met this woman, and it sounds like she kind of took you under her wings, or maybe she saw something in you, or you saw something in her. She brought you to these meetings. She brought you in rooms that are difficult to get into. What do you think that was? How? Because if someone's listening to this, how do they get a similar experience? How if they spot someone like you did, you spot her, you knew she was someone that you wanted to maybe mentor you or be close with. How were you able to? Not necessarily gain her trust, but how were you able to build a relationship with her that she was willing to give you so much?
I think that's exactly what it was, Taylor. It was about building relationships. So before I was invited into that circle, we would have a monthly cocktail or coffee and we would chat and connect. And, everyone in these worlds are building their own businesses or their own books in their own ways as well. And I'm very well networked and made a lot of connections and offered value before I asked for anything. And I think that that builds a lot of trust very quickly. And then when she built this group, then I was invited in. So I think it was just a right time and place. And also, I'm very intentional about providing a lot of value before I ask for anything. And also just elbowing my way into rooms I'm not supposed to be in.
And so if someone's earlier in their career, how can they provide value? Is it in that they meet people and they just keep connections and they say, oh, you need this all-star salesperson? Well, I know someone who just got laid off and they need a job. Is it those kinds of things? What's a practical way that if someone's listening to this that they're like, how can I provide value? If they're asking themselves that question, what can they do to provide value to others so that they can get these intros like you've had?
I just had this conversation with a young woman who is looking to switch careers. She's like early mid 20s. And so a couple of things that I recommended to her. Well, one is, I'm on the latter side of my career now. So I always want to stay connected with young people who are seeing what's next and providing value there. So I think that what often happens is when we're in our early youth and our early careers, we're like, I don't have anything of value. But the truth is that your perspective is really unique to us. And I think that there's so much value in being conscious and aware and connected with generational knowledge. And so to me, I thought that was really important. And then the other piece is actually building a platform. You are a brand. And I think people don't recognize that fast enough. So this young woman trying to go into a different sector of her industry, I told her she needed to build even just a newsletter. She has a lot of connections and a perspective. So how can you provide value by putting out content that helps folks like me understand your perspective in the market? So whether that's a blog, a vlog, a podcast, just knowing that you're a brand and that you have value, I don't think that we recognize that early on in or early enough on in our careers.
I completely agree. So let's switch gears and talk about the marketing. You spoke in an earlier conversation interview about how you've worked with 400 brands. Someone asked you what the biggest mistake you've seen those brands make. You say inconsistency. I completely agree with you too. And I asked myself this question, and I asked brands this question: why do you think that they are inconsistent? Why do you think that they continue making this mistakes? Because there are many, many brands that make this mistake, even larger ones. So why do you think that that's the key mistake and the one that they keep making?
I don't know if I have a perfect answer for that, but I posted on my IG yesterday. I went to a workout in the morning and I was so exhausted. I'm closing our fund one right now, and you can even hear it in my voice. Like I'm tired. This is really, really hard, the work that we're doing. And on that post, I said the same thing. Like, there's no magic to this. It's about consistency and just showing up. And I think that most people are inherently lazy. I don't think that there's a work ethic. I think their expectations of ease in how they will execute is not matched with reality, especially in markets that are very saturated, which is pretty much every market, every channel right now.
Hmm.
So I think that the lack of consistency is complacency. Honestly, I think that they either hire teams and they're like, they're going to just figure it out, but then they
Hmm.
don't do their part to show up and support those efforts. Yeah, I don't know. I've always had this like crazy work ethic, and I don't see it in a lot of other folks.
Really? Do you think it's a youth thing, or do you think it's a COVID thing, or do you think it's something altogether different?
I mean, I really don't know the answer to that. I think people have expectations that things are just going to happen easily. And that's just not the reality of life. And I do think it's part of the evils of social media. We only see these perfect snippets of people's lives. And you're like, I want that. That looks like that person did it overnight. And the truth is like, I'm a 20-year overnight success. Do you know what I mean? You hear that all the time. So I do think that it's probably a bit of a disconnect between people's reality and what we see because of the dangers of social media.
And people just outright lie on social media. A lot of those people are just
Completely.
lying.
Completely. Yes.
It's just outright fraud. What else are you seeing in marketing right now? You know, there's so much changing in marketing. You know, you have some of my e-commerce friends who are getting, you know, they used to sell on Amazon. Amazon was a great trade 3, 4, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, or you know, especially peak COVID. It was a great trade. Everybody's making money. Amazon today is a very, very difficult kind of business. You know, you have people going into TikTok shops, and you have just a lot of change going on in all these different industries. Influencers are now, you know, a real marketing and advertising channel for many brands. Um, what are you seeing, you know, today? And you know, you have exposure to a lot of brands, see what's going out there. Like, what are you seeing? What are the trends that you're kind of interested in?
I think it depends on the industry you're talking about, but we're seeing a ton of like live shopping platforms or layers of live shopping on other platforms. I think people want things in real time, and that's going to continue to grow and evolve. I love the fact that influencer marketing is no longer wild, wild west, but I do think people are unrealistic about the capital that it takes to actually launch and create a brand. We talk to a lot of early stage brands and a lot of established brands, and the chasm between the two is so incredibly vast. So I would say live shopping is what we're seeing as part of what I believe to be the future of e-commerce specifically. And then in terms of marketing in general, um, there's going to be I think, some new interesting platforms. I think people are underestimating Reddit as a platform. We actually
Mm.
invested in a company that is Gen Z, Gen
And when you say live shopping, you mean like the home shopping network of 20 years ago, uh, and this is, yeah, it's a digital version, and this is really hot in China, I think, right now, and it has been for year and a half, 2 years. Uh, uh, yeah, very far ahead in this way. I guess. Are you seeing more of this catching on? Maybe with younger brands. Are there some brands that you're seeing? Oh wow, this live shopping is really working in America, or are you still seeing it as kind of a Chinese piece that maybe is kind of slowly coming here? Very cool. Before we go back to the finance world, what types of clients do you mostly work with on the marketing side? Like who are your favorite types of clients that when they reach out to you, you're like, yes, you know, we all have them. What are the ones that you really, really love working with and you think make a big difference? Mm. Mhm. Can so my wife and I love Shark Tank. I think Shark Tank is a great way to learn certain elements of business, right? And there are many businesses that come on Shark Tank that they say on the show, and that now my wife and I will say before they even, it's like, this is not an investable business. This is a good business for someone to run. And, but it's a lifestyle bit, but I think lifestyle comes with this like connotation that you gave up, or it's a bad business, or any of those. Where I grew up, the most successful people, the people who owned a lot of the land, they ran lifestyle businesses, that print money. They make 5, 10, $20 million a year in profit. Um, uh, how and I think that venture capital has become sexy. It's become a brand, and even outside of Silicon Valley. And so now it's what people want. Now they say, I've made it if I raise money, even though they don't usually get any money from that. How do if you're helping someone in this journey and they really don't know what VC is or what private equity, they hear these words, but they really don't know what they are. How would you kind of like simply help them understand, should I raise money? Should I go to a bank? Do banks loan me money? Just from a high level, how would you help someone who's trying to navigate, just starting a business, thinking through these things? When should they come to you? I agree. Uh, the you have some unique traits as an investor, right? So operator of a business, you understand how to operate a business. A lot of investors don't. They've never really operated a business. You have this deep marketing background. How does that you think? I'm sure it helps, but how does that help you in identifying deals or attracting deals, or has that been a competitive advantage? Wow. Wow, that's really impressive. So is it the listening software, is it looking at, oh, okay, here's how much social engagement they're getting, and here's the 12 competitors we've identified in the space, and then if we compare you to them, then, they're three times larger than you on social, but we think that because of these reasons, we can help you close that gap. Or they're 50 times larger than you, everyone is destroying you. There's no chance you're going to make that up. No amount of money is going to fix it. We're not interested in investing. Is that kind of the core idea? Very cool. Very cool. How do you think that the VC landscape is shifting in terms of who gets funded and why today? So much has changed. COVID, I guess, was 6 years ago now. Did COVID impact some of this? Is there no impact there? How do you think that the landscape is shifting today? We don't have to make a charge, but answer it any way you'd like. I like that. What's a trait that you're looking for, given all your background, what's a trait you're looking for in the founders? Like what are the, if you remove the business from the equation, maybe what are the traits that you look for from these founders that you say, oh, that person's going to be, a big success or someone that you really want to work with? What a great answer. So at the back of your knee sweat, you say, "All right, we should do this deal." Right, right. I like that. Um, yeah, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, advice you would give to founders, because I think that you're right that some are finding it hard to raise, not just from venture, but hard maybe to get loans or hard to get any kind of access to capital. What advice would you have to those people, especially if they're outside the major markets? If you're in a New York City, you're in an LA, and Miami, what have you, maybe it's easier for you. But if you're listening to this in the middle of Indiana, it's even harder for them to have access to capital. So, what advice would you give those people? Before we enter into the life hack, any kind of final words of wisdom or thoughts you'd like to share with the audience?
I think I just wanted to get in the game, especially women, women of color don't take ventures as important for initiative, as you know. Educating and empowering folks on these books just about, women are going to be in charge of use the number. I think not women educate around much make money. So yeah, they all need to check whether students like make sure that your wealth management team reflect your lived experience. I think you can't create these well, peers or some for into the game despite significant
Can you speak a little bit more to the wealth transfer? Some of us have kind of heard some of these things, but can you just speak to, yeah, that from a high level?
so basically we do a break diet and women's lives long
Mhm.
but not never heard that but basically we're getting here. I just think that we're in a time and stage, time and era where women need to take initiative. So it's an interesting time because we just got the right to buy credit and get a mortgage 50 years ago. Like think about that. So I think jumping into education money. Really the person is in particular talking about money is not like investing money and what you're investing in you're going to market luxury.
Wow, that's excellent. Uh, we'll end with a hack. So this could be a product. This could be a podcast. It could be a new pillow you got. It could be anything that you'd like to share. Um, I will go. I'm gonna go. I'll go first, and then we'll end with you, Laurel. So, um, Amazon distribution centers, they do tours. And I did one outside of Los Angeles. It's about an hour east of LA. That one was very cool. I mentioned this on the show, but the reason I'm bringing it up now is that they do private tours. So you can, if you have at least 10 people, you can get so if you have between 10 and 25 people, you can do private tours, and depending on the distribution center, they do them like on Mondays or Tuesdays. So I'm organizing a group of post-exit founders who are doing a tour down at the US-Mexico border down near San Diego of a like heavily roboticized Amazon fulfillment center. So I mention this because if you have, if you're listening to this or you're affiliated with this and maybe you have a group of friends that you'd like to go on the tour with, it's so much cooler to do it with people you know. Like it's cool to do it in general, but if you do it with people you know, you talk about it afterwards. I went with a bunch of strangers and they were all nice, but afterwards it's like, okay, and I just went in my car by myself. And so I'm really looking forward to going with people. It's completely free. They have them all over the country. They're not in every distribution center, but they have them in most major metros, within an hour of you. And it takes 90 minutes. You get to see the people. You get to walk all through these facilities. It is very cool. You get to see some of the robots. It's just a really neat experience to see how, these distribution centers run, and they run 24/7, 365, and they're ginormous. The one I was in was 1.3 million square feet, multiple floors. Unbelievable. Very cool. So I highly recommend if you're interested in that sort of thing. What about you, Laurel? Any cool hacks you'd like to share in closing? Sure. Hmm. Wow. Huh. Ah, very cool. Very cool. Well, thank you so much for coming on. We'll list all your contact info or LinkedIn, everything in the description. And thanks for coming on Founder Secrets. Thanks, Laurel. Right.
Thank you for rocking with the homies. Taylor, Trusty, and Flavie. Seize the day, own it. Until next time, hold it down, hold it down. Hey.